Welcome to the Biotech Startups podcast by Exceeder. Join us as we speak with first-time founders, serial entrepreneurs, and experienced investors about the challenges and triumphs of running a biotech startup, from pre-seed to IPO, with your host, John Chi. In our last episode, Andrey Doronichev shared how he launched one of Russia's first mobile content platforms, stepped away at the height of its success, and found his way to Google through a cold email. If you missed it, check out part 2. In part 3, Andrey reflects on his time at YouTube, how he helped bring the platform to mobile, scaled it to billions of users, and convinced 2 rival companies to support one of the most high-profile app launches in history. He also talks about navigating rapid growth, building a team culture that embraced bold ideas, and how those lessons shaped his approach to product and to leadership.
No, because I think he goes to show like no one really knows anything, right? It's like we're all just figuring it out. And like you had this early insight from a personal experience. It seemed like your counterpart in Tokyo also just had a personal experience. And sometimes like it's like I don't want to say it's like luck, but just like this sometimes these things just like the stars aligning and like you've had these like personal experiences that inform where you think things are going. And sometimes a lot of people just don't have that experience. So they're like, yeah, YouTube's it's cooked. Like, but you're like, no, it is not. I promise you, it is not.
I think a meaningful lesson from this, and of course, like this is a special, like I got lucky in many ways, right? Like I got part of this right place, right time, all that. But the useful insight that listeners can use is that while a lot of things in the world are enabled by institutions or corporations or some big entities like governments, change is driven by humans, by separate people. Like there's a person who enables a change in every big organization, and that then becomes a big thing. And then, of course, without this big organization behind it, this one person wouldn't do anything. But it's an important thing that you as a leader of a startup, or you're like even no matter how small, or you as an employee of a big organization, you could be the agent of change. And I learned it this way, right? Like I was just one guy with an accent. And there were like a few other people, actually all of them with accents, who really believed in this idea. And then we took this thing from crazy zero usage experiment all the way to the first billion users, and then like the biggest app in the world, right? Like for a while, YouTube, and it still is one of the biggest apps. I don't know if it is the biggest, but definitely like at that time, 2012, were the biggest app in the world, period. And that was something.
So crazy. And I think I'm trying to think about all the elements at play during that time too. Is like iPhone coming out. There's like before, I think unlimited data was a thing on your mobile plan, right? Like you're probably getting throttled. AT&T or whoever were just like, no. You don't get unlimited. Like you're going to get capped off, and everything after that is like a overage bill that you're receiving. Was that a big limiting factor?
It was a big problem for us. Like you can Google my name and you'll find a bunch of like old newspapers where I would get into scandals with like AT&Ts of this world because they would accuse us of like, using all the bandwidth and like breaking the network.
Yeah, exactly.
But truth was like internet was exploding on mobile, infrastructure was not ready. Yes, we were a very popular service. And of course, a lot of traffic that video was generating was indeed like putting strain on their networks. So it was an interesting time of like hypergrowth. And, again, like it's a huge luck to be part of that. But I feel like there's always something that is hyper growing. Like right now it's AI, right? Like you always can position yourself to be part of that. Then like, of course, it's a bit of luck to actually become part of something that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're reflecting on being like the head of mobile, I'm imagining it wasn't like we talked about a little bit like the data considerations for, phone plans was a thing. What were some other challenges and kind of triumphs of that era for you leading YouTube mobile?
The biggest thing I'm most proud of is getting to launch the YouTube app for iPhone, for iOS. It is a separate long story, but if I try to tell it quickly, Google and Apple were like truly fighting. Steve Jobs hated Google because he felt betrayed that Google started Android while Eric Schmidt was on board of Apple. So there was this huge drama going on. Two companies went from being like allies and friends and having like YouTube pre-installed on their original iPhone to being like the worst enemies and not talking to each other. And here I am, like a 29-something-year-old product manager from London who tries to build an app and replace that original iPhone feature and actually have it launched in the App Store, where Apple doesn't approve anything that Google tries to launch. And so everyone at Google told me, like, okay, this will never launch. This is a stupid investment. Like, no. And then, like, over 3 years, gradually through some clever strategizing and communication, I managed to go and talk to like the top management of Apple and then to top management of Google and basically like be this person like trying to convince both sides that even though they hate each other, it will be good for everyone if iPhone had a great YouTube experience. And a way to enable it is to let my team to launch the app. Like Google, I had to convince Google that they need to fund us building an app for Apple. And I had to convince Apple that they have to allow us to launch it.
Oh my God.
It was like a really dramatic moment in 2012 when iOS 6 came out. I was negotiating with both parties like really, really hard, trying to basically convince Apple to remove the pre-installed, outdated, like old TV player kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was essentially a replacement for Flash, right? Because YouTube was running on Flash. iPhone didn't support Flash. So in order for them not to look like the browser is inferior, they had to do something. So they put this like little TV icon. All it could do is replace some real small subset of YouTube videos, but it created an impression that, you know, iPhone is a proper browser. And so the hard problem was, how do I convince them to really change the face of iPhone? Because this thing was there from V1. Remove it from it and simultaneously approve the app we've built in the App Store. And so they would never tell us what's going on, if they allow that or not. But we requested all that many times. And then iOS 6 preview comes out and it doesn't have the old TV icon in it. And the whole world erupts, like the media starts writing, or Apple like escalates fight with Google, they dished the YouTube app and whatnot. And meanwhile, me and the team are celebrating that. That means that they agreed, right? Like,
yeah.
So they cleared the way and we launched this app. And that was like the biggest and the most exciting launch in my entire life, I think.
Holy crap. I realize this probably could be a multi-hour saga, but how did you convince that it was a win-win? Like, how did you get the bad blood? I mean, maybe there still was bad blood and they're like, fine, but...
Yeah, it was bad blood all the way.
Was it just an economic, like, all right, we still hate each other, but like, let's make money kind of thing?
No, it was, I really, really, really carefully studied psychology of both teams and specific executives that were involved in the decision. And I created those slides really beautifully, like designed in Apple style in Keynote with all the attention to details and fonts and everything that were essentially like rooting for the user. And they were like giving a very specific reasons. And there were like a lot of them. Why, if you want to prioritize user experience and make it great, like truly great, if you're standing by your values, this is the only way. And like, I will not go into details, but there's so many things that like I truly believed in that. So basically the path to do something like to enable this massive kind of diplomatic win was to focus the conversation rather than on a zero-sum game of us versus them. I was almost acting as an advocate for like a user that both companies share. It's like there are billions of people that like basically it's almost like a kid in custody of parents who are getting a divorce, right? Like and the custody battle. And you basically at some point you have to convince both sides to think of the interest of a person in the middle. And so that was the play and it worked. Like,
that's amazing.
No matter how those companies were like hating each other, they all really care about their loyal users. And they did the right thing. And I'm really grateful to all of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. And hearing that and like, that's a lesson for anyone, right? It's just like, you got to get people out of the zero-sum mindset where it's like, I got to win at your expense. But I really appreciate the emphasis on like the psychology. Because like, again, we're all just like you talk about like how change comes from within like it's a person like
Mm-hmm.
and
There's a
like
person. Yeah,
there's a
face.
person there's a face to it, and also just like at the same time it's just like despite the bad blood, know who you're talking to and what they care about and how they're predisposed and like kind of all those things, and navigating that is like critically important.
That's a great summary, John. Actually, but again, like jumping ahead and connecting the dots, I think a lot of people in my current position were like, let's say you're running a biotech or you're running a tech bio company that builds some technology that you want big pharma to pay attention to. And you're probably having these conversations. Oh, what will Roche, be interested, or will Genentech care about it? And you talk about those corporations as like those big, faceless things. Well, in reality, the path to success is to actually think of a specific person at Roche or Genentech or whatever company who might be interested and who might become the champion for the deal or partnership here. Like who is a particular principal investigator? What is the particular role with a particular lead or who has a face and salary and interest and psychology to whom you can appeal, whose life you can make better by partnering? How do you reach out to them? How do you find them? How do you build a relationship with them? And that is an important lesson, that those corporations, at the end of the day, they're just a bunch of people with their own interests in mind. And really, what you're trying to do is to align interest of yourself, of the company's representative, and the patient or like the population of patients in between you all who will win as a result of your deal.
Absolutely. I mean, I think at the culmination of getting it approved for iOS, I mean, it just goes to show you can get it done even if there is bad blood, really bad blood. And like, so for anyone out there who's like trying to like, man, this is a insurmountable task. It's just like, it starts from that. And like, you can get it done even when relations might be tense. And so that was kind of a big culmination, it sounds like. And beyond YouTube, you started to broadly start to oversee product management. Can you talk a little bit about life post, heading the YouTube mobile at Google?
As it happens, like a launch like this, like when you are in bio, if you are that researcher who like really believed in some idea and then it became a successful drug, of course, that gives you a lot of weight in the organization and suddenly it changes your life, right? Because suddenly you can be the person who has ideas and they get funded and you get resources. And at that time, like it was 2014, when I took my team to Hawaii because our app became YouTube. And like everyone recognized that was it. And, and this is a great thing about Google. Like people gave credit to me and my team, like truly gave credit. We didn't remain just like this, like guys in the basement who coded something up. But I love Google and its culture in this way. It's amazing. So we got a lot of credit. And as a result, I got a lot of creative freedom to do things. And at the same time, like YouTube mobile app became such a huge thing with so many people working on it. And I felt like I'm becoming an operator rather than like actually, starting something from scratch. And at my core, I'm an entrepreneur. Like I like starting with zero, with vision, and then with like a couple of people getting something together and then growing from that. That's my thing. So managing a hundreds of person team and like driving revenue from that many billions to that many billions, like it's not really what I love. So I started thinking of like starting something new. And at that time, I was thinking of this core mission of mine, liberating information. And so the interesting thing that was happening back then, I was thinking like, what's after video? And, it seemed like what is after video is 3D, is virtual reality, is this like more immersive stuff. And that was 2014. That was like very beginning of it. Like Oculus was a startup at that time, not even like at Meta. But a couple of other companies, tried something in 3D and immersive stuff. Google didn't have anything. And I started like pitching this idea that maybe like the next step beyond video is hosting immersive 3D on YouTube, creating those 3D experiences and, some stereoscopic vision things and like hosting content for virtual reality glasses and all that. And so I started, digging into this, and as it happens like in academia or indie hacker circles, like you find like-minded people by just getting your ideas out and just like pitching to everyone. And so soon enough, I found a group of people within Google who were thinking along the same lines. And we all, like Google had this cool thing that was called 20% projects, where you could like dedicate 20% of your time to something you're really passionate about. In reality, normally that was between like 120 and 140% of your workload.
Yeah.
But we started this 20% project called Google Cardboard, which was a super cheap virtual reality glasses where you could put your phone. It was open source design, made out of cardboard, literally, with SDK and a bunch of apps. And so we had like 18 people working on this project. I was one of 2 product managers who worked on this launch. And it wasn't supposed to be a big thing. It was supposed to be a fun little thing we do, like out of cardboard. But suddenly it blew up and became like a thing.
Yeah.
And to this day, like probably like vast majority of people who got their first experience with VR probably got it through some version of Google Cardboard, not necessarily made by Google, but built using our designs and using our SDK. And then they would upgrade to Oculuses and like other like, Vision Pros and other like more sophisticated VR devices. So yeah, like suddenly I found myself starting a new team, like essentially being one of the founding members of a new virtual and augmented reality team at Google. And it was a really scrappy startup experience again. We squatted in the office. We found this condemned building like that was supposed to be knocked down. Didn't have micro kitchens and normal Google stuff. And we're just like hanging out there, building our things, building some prototypes and whatnot. And of course, like over time, over the next 2 years, it became like a real team with 1,000-something people working. And I was in charge of all the applications, like VR and AR applications at Google. So if you played like Google Earth in VR, or you play Tilt Brush, like where you paint in space around you in 3D, or Google Expeditions, that are like the product for schools, and many, many other products. That was all like my team that, a lot of really smart people working in my organization at that time. And, of course, super proud to be part of it. And then like that eventually became Android XR. And that's like what is like Google's program in this area. It's basically Google XR, Android XR, Stargate, the 3D video conferencing project, YouTube VR app, and like all the 3D content on YouTube. Like all those things are, results of this original VR team. Yeah.
Love that. And I love how you're like, I want to go back to the scrappy startup days, and we're able to carve out a niche even within a large organization like Google to do it again. But even despite the success of the YouTube mobile app, they're like, we're going to put you in this building. They didn't give you like the plush office. They're just like, no, you're back at square one. Here you go.
I think this just tells a story of entrepreneurial journey, because like if you are a really fancy, successful founder, let's say your therapeutics worked and you sold it to big pharma and you cashed out and you're very, very successful. So many of those people start a new company again. And when you start a new company, it's once again, you're in the co-working, here's a desk, you have your coffee mug, you have nothing else, you have no monitor, and you need to buy one. And you're once again like running around pitching a thing, and a bunch of investors tell you no, despite your previous successes. And this journey of like going back to the roots and starting from scratch, you either love it or you hate it. Like I obviously love it. And so I've done it so many times for that reason.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think something to think about and I think this is kind of a recurring theme, is like, know that you like it. Like know that you like that before you like embark on it and push off, because especially if you start taking on capital, that journey is like, there's an expectation that you stick it out for a decently long time.
Yes.
And right. And you're like, if you go in and you're like, like you pretend that like, I like this.
And then you're like, oh, just kidding.
Just kidding. It is hard to just kidding and ripcord that thing out. Like it's next to impossible. And if you do it, it's very painful.
I actually tried, and I will tell the story of OPTIC and my current company and how we pivoted. And before we pivoted to bio, like we had a previous business that actually worked and then it didn't. And at that time, we still had most of the investors' money on our account. And I called my investors and I was like, hey, that didn't work out. Like, let us return the money. And, I think what I do next. And our investors were like, yeah, actually, we're not in the business of taking money back. So go figure out how to multiply them. Figure out a different idea.
Think exactly that. Like pulling the ripcord is not so easy. It's not so easy. They're like, no, we're good. You'll figure it out.
No, you have to commit. That's like the thing, that starting from scratch is fun, but you got to know that like once you start something, at some point you're in the death valley of nothing's happening. It's not fun anymore. It just grind and it's not growing, and it's going to happen. Like it's happening to me right now, and it's hard, and you have to go through it. And at some point, it might actually work out.
Yeah, that's like a personal, just like introspection thing, right? And not everyone necessarily has the experience to know that for certain. But like, I think I recommend for anyone who is contemplating starting up a company, go join a startup. Just go join it, and maybe adjacent, just like feel the roller coaster.
Yeah.
Like have the like, not necessarily like the first go is like, all right, I'm starting it. I know I love this roller coaster, and you're like, God, get me off this roller coaster. right? Like, which is funny. This is a side. Like when I was my now wife, but girlfriend at the time, I took her on a roller coaster, and she pretended she's like, no, I love roller coasters. And it's kind of at that time when we're like just trying to like, yeah, we'll do anything. Like, everything's fun.
Yeah.
Went on the roller coaster in Santa Cruz, the beach boardwalk.
Oh yeah.
I've never been screamed at. There's just tears. Like just, I thought you said you like roller coasters. And she was like, no, just like screaming.
That is a story of getting a friend or a colleague as a co-founder in a startup.
Yeah. It's just like, oh my God. You're like, whoa, like what's going on?
Yeah.
And so anyways, it's like anyone who's thinking about starting a company, join one and see if it's a fit for you. Because there will eventually be kind of a road bump. And if you like get through a road bump, you're like, I could do that some more.
Yeah. Go find out what it smells like.
Yeah.
I have a story like my friend, an investor, took his daughter to one of the fast growing startups in their office, and they work like 24/7, 6 days a week, whatever. As she went out of them, she was like, oh, now I know what product market fit smells like.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just like,
It smells like sweat.
Yeah. And you're just like, not for me. Like,
that's right.
Not for me.
Right.
Like, I'm going to go elsewhere. But so, it seems like you had this itch to continue to go back to the entrepreneurial roots. When did you know it's time to leave Google? And did you know what was next?
Yeah. From all this career of mine, what I learned was like, one, I really love entrepreneurial, like start from scratch, get people excited about this idea and then find this growth. Second thing I learned was that I don't enjoy working in like more straightforward or well understood things. Like at Google, I could have worked on like ads or, products that are already like clearly successful, and there's so much more opportunity. You can come up with new ideas and create so much more value. But I kept gravitating towards things that were borderline insane or like wouldn't work. So it is this like academia researcher part of me who really like just pokes holes in the like frontier of knowledge and seeing what's out there. And in most cases, it's jobs that fail, right? Like, yes, YouTube worked out and I got lucky. But my next thesis, VR, we started the team in 2014, 2015. 2014 was Cardboard, 2015, like the full team. And only now we're starting to see some traction, but it's still like so small comparing to iPhone. And so when I was pitching this back then, I was like, this is the next iPhone. This is the next mobile industry. Like it's going to blow up. It didn't, right? I was wrong. And by the way, like as an extension of this virtual reality work, at some point I realized that, okay, like if we're making information accessible and I really want to make interactive 3D more accessible, requiring to wear a separate device on your face is not really increasing your addressable market. So how can we actually avoid doing that? And the way to avoid doing that, like actually interactive 3D exists out there. It's called games, it's computer games.
Yep.
And so actually like my last project at Google was also interactive 3D, but rather than running it in specialized devices that you wear on your faces, we tried to make it accessible through browser, basically making computer games and 3D interactive software available as a streamable, almost like YouTube, streamable browser link. And it was called Stadia. Also didn't fly, but extremely bold and technologically like marvelous platform that I was in charge of launching. And I was the product manager for the consumer side of it, not all of it. But that was my last project. Didn't work out. It was 2021 at that time, like right after pandemic, like we didn't go to the office. I didn't see my team for a year and a half by that time. And I just, honestly, that was the time when I felt like it was time to move on. I felt like, yes, I can try to start something from scratch at Google, but without this in-person energy, it's sort of, if I'd be frank, I just didn't enjoy working from this office on Zoom all day like this. It didn't feel creative, or like there's something special about like smelling the smell of startup, being in this grindy room, like in a building that was like somewhere on the side of the campus, and like really working your asses off to make something happen. Being on Zoom and trying to do things remotely didn't work for me anymore. And also around the same time, like as I was, sniffing around Google and talking to people, I talked to a bunch of like AI research people in Jeff Dean's organization. And there was this organization that was, it's researchers, right? So their job is publishing papers like Attention All You Need that enable transformers. And there was so much research going on, so much cool stuff happening there. None of that was becoming products. And looking into like what was on the forefront of AI, and I was like deeply connected with machine learning since my YouTube days, because that was how we made YouTube searchable, right? Like a lot of computer vision advancements and like computer vision research and applicability of early days ML research actually came from YouTube. It's underestimated how much role YouTube as a product played in Google's need to invest into sophisticated machine learning algorithms. So a lot of great research that enabled like modern computer vision and later on modern generative AI actually didn't necessarily come from the YouTube organization, but was sponsored by YouTube product for Google research team to develop, right? And so because I was in charge of this like biggest consumer-facing surface, search and discovery at YouTube was an important part of my world. And working with those teams that enabled sort of indexing and watching every video and understanding what's in it, or moderating content and like understanding like bad stuff or stuff that someone should be paid for because like you uploaded the video with like Katy Perry song in the background, but instead of blocking you, YouTube would show an ad to your viewer and then give this money to Katy Perry, right? Like all those technologies that enable this free flow of information were heavily reliant on machine learning. And so because I had all this exposure, by the time I was done with my last project at Google and I left, I took some time off, like a half a year sabbatical. But I realized that what I want to do next, and like the next big thing, the next mobile kind of thing was going to be AI, was going to be in machine learning. And I thought I wanted to start like a private company, like an AI research company that would focus on some vertical. So the whole thesis behind OPTIC when we started was that we won't compete with Googles of this world for some massive horizontal problems, like building a new LLM. Like I felt like, okay, I don't think we can succeed there. But finding a verticalized niche where you have a lot of data, a lot of money, and very few native AI engineers, that is like a game that we wanted to play. And so from there, you can like think, okay, if you go like straight into, let's say, video, like which was my bread and butter for many years, and I know the industry really well, but it probably will have a lot of native AI engineers already kind of working it because it's such a broad thing to do, right? But if you go into, let's say, blockchain, which was like tons of publicly available data and a lot of money, but not enough people like in that industry really like cared about machine learning or AI, that sounds like a perfect fit. Bio, same story, like tons of data, or at least I thought so. Like, let me put a little asterisk here. But like, sounds like, academia has been measuring things for decades. Like there's so much data available, all those papers, it's out there. You can just grab it and like train some models. And then, pharma industry, billions and trillions of dollars, ginormous industry, so much money. And all those like super smart people, but they're not ML researchers. So sounds like a great fit. There are a couple more hypotheses there that were smaller. Those were the two big ones. And we actually started with blockchain. That was the first year of OPTIC when we built essentially like a content moderation system for all the publicly available content that was on chain. And the hypothesis was that if blockchain really becomes the new web, the Web 3, then like all the content will move there. So YouTubes of this world and Facebooks and all the other content providers will eventually end up doing some sort of like on-chain content. For that, you will require a lot of infrastructure, including like authenticity and safety of content. And that's what we were building. We became quite successful in the first year. And actually, most of the existing, like that nascent market, most of the existing big providers like NFT marketplaces and all the people who were doing content for Web3 actually became our customers, and we were generating revenue. And, we felt quite good. We like made a couple $1 million in the very first year. in revenue. So I felt like, okay, great. But then like, as it happens, when you're making those bets on a market that doesn't yet exist, a year later, FTX scandal happened. This whole industry just like fell apart. And we realized that, okay, we're betting on a niche that will not happen. And so that was the time when, I mentioned we came to our investors, and my first reaction was like, okay, like we bet on a niche. This didn't happen. Take back your money and we'll figure something else and we'll come back and pitch again. And they're like, no, you already have this money on your account and you're already committed. Go figure out, do something else. I was like, wow. I didn't realize that's how it works. Okay, fine. And admittedly, that was like the business I had before was not venture backed, right? So this was my first experience with actual like real like good pedigree investors. Like Kleiner Perkins is our lead investor, and like Greylock and many other like good names. And so I was new to this, right? And I didn't realize that they would let us do something completely different. But our investors were super nice. They said, hey, Andrey, we like believe in you and the team. You guys, great AI team. There's all the other things that you can do with AI.
That's all for this episode of the Biotech Startups podcast with Andrey Doronichev. Join us next time for the final part of this 4-part series, where we'll hear how Andrey and his team pivoted from blockchain to biotech and what it took to turn a failing startup into an AI-powered drug discovery company. He'll also discuss the winding path to founding OPTIC, what he's learned about platform strategy, and why solving for science alone isn't enough in biotech. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Thanks for listening. The Biotech Startups podcast is produced by Exceeder. Don't want to miss an episode? Search for the Biotech Startups podcast wherever you get your podcasts and click subscribe. Exceeder provides research labs with equipment leases on founder-friendly terms to support paths to exceptional outcomes. To learn more, visit our website www.exceeder.com. On behalf of the team here at Exceeder, thanks for listening. The Biotech Startups podcast provides general insights into the life science sector through the experiences of its guests. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from the podcast is at the user's own risk. The views expressed by the participants are their own and are not the views of Exceeder or sponsors. No reference to any product, service, or company in the podcast is an endorsement by Exceeder or its guests.